Hello, everybody. So my name is Carly Richmond. I am a principal developer advocate at Elastic. It's still weird to say. And I'm also a manager there as well. And today I'm here to talk about public speaking. And I'm going to tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. So the first thing is speaking on your own can be scary. Um, I saw a while ago this great, it's an old TED talk, but it's by Deborah Francis White, who is a stand-up comedian. So a very professional speaker, can deal with heckling way better than I can by any means. And she makes this point that public speaking is scary because you're the center of attention, because thinking about, evolution in nature, it's basically our equivalent situation to being that gazelle on the savannah that's about to be taken out by a pack of hungry lions and eaten. This is our kind of modern day equivalent. We are the center of attention. There's the potential that people are going to ask us horrible questions that we just don't know the answer to. And that is a very lonely and isolating experience, really without much benefit. But I'm here to bust that because actually, when you come to events like this, you are not just the speaker. I am the speaker right now, but in about 5 or so minutes' time, I'm going to go back to being part of the audience again, meaning that when I go to conferences and I go to meetups, I'm part of an audience that gets to learn from fantastic people and grow my knowledge base and perhaps take useful things back to my team. But it's also, if you think about it, a networking opportunity. You're standing up here, people can see my name, they recognize who I am, maybe if I'm wandering about conferences later on. And we have this notion of the hallway track in conferences, which is where you're walking by the booth, speaking to sponsors and speaking to other attendees. And if you've been a speaker, most likely people will come up to you and go, "Oh, I really liked your talk," or "I had an extra question that I didn't get time to answer." And it actually gives you a nice opening for networking, which we all hate networking. We know it's super awkward and uncomfortable. And having that kind of way in to have nice, authentic conversations instead of the usual kind of awkward chit chat can mean you end up with more meaningful connections that can be useful for your career and are also connections that are expansive across companies, which was very useful for me a couple of years ago because I worked in the same company for 10 years. I used to work at Morgan Stanley as a software engineer, and therefore I had a really heavy network that was Morgan heavy. And I managed to move out and meet other people, which was really cool. Now, another reason why you might not want to speak is it's really difficult to stand up on a stage. There's, quite often the lineups for conferences might be heavily dominated with men, with white men in particular. And it can be very difficult to say, I want to be the person that stands out on that lineup. And I'm here today to tell you that it's getting better. And in fact, I've seen so many wonderful people who have not just come back from, diversity in terms of gender, but also diversity of thought, diversity of the companies and experiences they've had, the backgrounds that they come from. And that's how we as a technical community all learn how to grow together. So if you're part of that lineup as a speaker, you are showcasing yourself as being a role model for other people and thus improving the lineups of the conferences we all attend. Everyone tells me that you need to be super technical to work and to be a speaker, that you need to know the ins and outs and nitty-gritty details of every single aspect of the framework you're talking about, that you have to talk about technical topics where every single slide is littered with code because that's what we go to conferences and meetups to learn about frameworks, learn about code, learn how to build software. But the reality is actually, in order for a conference and a meetup to have a diverse, set of content that doesn't send everyone to sleep, we need to have different types of content that go into different levels of technical breadth and depth. That means quite often we might cover cultural topics. We might cover topics that have a small portion of code, but also discuss architecture and wider themes. But we also have people's journeys being used to actually showcase and highlight their experiences and some of the mistakes that we might not want to learn, might want to pass on when we're presenting and building our own software. So remember that you are a cup of knowledge and you have your own insights that are useful to everybody, not just yourself. The other thing I hear a lot is it's too late to start. Speaking is something you need to get into straight away as soon as you start in tech and keep growing. That it's something that you need to have been taught how to do. And sadly, the state of the education system for oratory in the UK, in my experience, is actually pretty sucky, that we don't actually teach people how to speak in public. And it's not a skill we often carry. Now, I'm going to cast back and take my time machine back in time to 2011. That was when I first started working as a software engineer in tech. But I didn't actually start doing public speaking until 2020, which is the worst time to start trying to do public speaking because everything moved online. But you know what? We're now in 2024, and I've had opportunities to stand up in front of not just this audience, but many others. I've got to share my knowledge. I've got to check out the hallway track and connect with all these wonderful people. And it's done wonders for my career, not just because I've got the opportunity to do all sorts of wacky and wonderful content and showcase my knowledge and get to work with interesting people, but it's also the reason I'm an advocate today, because I managed to build up a portfolio of content, only a subset of which you see on the screen, that shows that I can speak, that I can explain technical concepts well, and it's really helped me catapult my career to new heights I didn't even expect several years ago. So I introduced this topic about why you shouldn't speak. The reality is, I'm telling you why you should. It's all about gaining access to showcase your knowledge and your expertise, an opportunity to connect and expand your network, which we all know is important for having a fulfilling career. And also the other aspect that just opens doors and opportunities for you. So if you needed to know what the reason is to do a lightning talk at our next event and start your journey into speaking, I hope I've given you it today. And with that, I want to say thank you. We should have time for some couple of questions, but if we don't get to your question or you want to ask it anonymously or reach out afterwards, I'm on LinkedIn. Look for Carly Richmond, you'll find me. I'm at Carly L. Richmond on X if you want to DM me, and I'm also on Mastodon as well, or there's my site too. So with that, thank you and happy to answer any questions.
As always, many thanks, Carly. Amazing talk. Any questions for Carly?
I have a question. Which one of those, or I imagine many of those, or potentially, did you find the most difficult? Which ones did you feel that you had to overcome?
The technical one was the biggest one for me. So my journey was interesting because I did start in 2020. I started doing public speaking after taking 6 months off for maternity leave, a time when I didn't touch any code. I was lucky, quite frankly, if I could catch a podcast or something or even read a book. So, and before that, I'd done more of a lead role. I was doing a lot of engineering management and stuff. So I ended up in a situation where I hadn't written code for 2 years. And I had this notion that you had to be talking about reams of code in a technical talk, and you had to dive into such minor aspects of frameworks and know everything. And the reality is that that's absolute garbage, because I'm not an expert in the nitty-gritty details of every framework I use, but I certainly have experiences that are useful for other people. I've managed to build some cool stuff, and I like sharing with that how these things work. And that for me is something that I've been able to do partially through just diving back in and slowly building up my technical chops again, building up my technical instincts, which do disappear, by the way, if you're not writing code, and really work on that, and also have the confidence to say I don't know to the answers to questions. So technical instinct and confidence was the big ones for me.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Carly?
Just a quick one. Carly, did you ever had this feeling that you don't know enough to talk, in a sense that because there will be other people out there who are listening to me will be having more knowledge on the topic, what am I bringing them new to the table, in a sense? Because I think I always had that everything's available so much easily. You just Google it and you get things right. So I always had that in my mind and heart that whatever I say, I think people knows it already, or because this knowledge is everywhere. So did you ever had that, and do you think that's something we should be overcome? I think I should overcome, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, I'm really bad for always assuming that the things that I know are obvious, that
Yeah.
everybody knows it, and
Yeah.
therefore what's the point in going out to talk about it? And the first talk I ever gave was very much on that theme, because the first talk I ever gave to a conference was on obstacle boards. And this was back when I was still doing Scrum Mastery. So it was submitted and accepted to an Agile conference. And I thought everybody knew what obstacle boards were. And I thought, why am I doing this? I even thought like they'd given me the shot, just kind of not necessarily out of pity, but this idea of they need to have, I was there as the token diverse person. So that was kind of like even then when I'd started doing it, that, why am I doing this again? I'm not the right person. But actually I saw from the questions and the feedback I got, it wasn't something that people knew about. But also, in addition to that, those that did hadn't used it in the way that I had used it. So your experience does matter, because it gives people ideas of how they might apply stuff in different ways. Now, do I still have that, I shouldn't be talking about this? With some new topics, yes. So a good example would be, I started doing some talks on vector search. It's part of my job at Elastic to know about vector search. I had to learn about vector search from scratch. So sometimes talking about that feels weird because you've not got the confidence to say, you know, the nitty-gritty details of everything. But actually, just being honest with the things you don't know and then following up afterwards is a good way to learn those things. So I tend to keep an eye on what topics I have been doing, what topics I'm comfortable with, and just be honest when I don't know things, and it comes across as a better talk at the end of the day because I end up trying to find the answer, which is cool. I hope that answers your question.
Of course.
All right, folks. So who do we have next, Carly?
Leena, you're up.
Well, let's do some fancy stuff. Cool. It's real good. I'm looking at a different screen to you that you might be seeing. So it's the slide up. Fantastic. Make sure I'm using the right mic. So hello. Yeah, thank you, Carly. I seem to be making a habit of following these great pep talks. So thank you, Carly. I think this is just what I needed to hear today. So looking forward to it. Yeah, so I am Leena Mooneeram. I am a senior platform engineer at a company called Chainalysis, and we are a data platform for the blockchain. So you may not know this, but platform teams have a superpower. And that superpower is invisibility. Now, this superpower is not necessarily restricted to just platform. There are many other teams that may also have this superpower, but it's something that the platform teams specifically, I believe, suffer from. And what I'm going to be talking to you about is really that if you have this superpower, is to understand that good work doesn't necessarily talk for itself. So with platform teams, when the platform is working smoothly, no one notices. When engineering teams are regularly deploying to production and there are no incidents, the focus is actually on what are we going to deploy next? What's the next new feature? When engineers can actually easily accomplish what they want to do, they can find the documentation that they want, all is quiet, there's no issue. So really, a platform team's best work is often invisible. Now, as I said, it's not a superpower that's unique to just platform teams. Many other teams, especially those with internal customers, can find it difficult to make the impact of their work visible. So what I'd like to do is spend the next few minutes helping us to understand that, again, good work doesn't necessarily speak for itself, and that teams need to be able to advocate for themselves and be vocal about their achievements and their impact. So how should we be visible? How do we make ourselves seen? Now, you can do that in a number of ways, and I'm just going to go through 3. So one of the first things that you can do is celebrate your wins. And I suppose this applies particularly given Carly's talk on an individual level as well as on a team level. So celebrate your wins and celebrate them publicly. So from a platform perspective or from a team perspective, using metrics and measures that you may have, we should take from platform, we should take the opportunity to celebrate that with our help, with the platform team's help, feature teams are deploying more frequently and more reliably. We could celebrate and announce when we've added automation that helps every engineer save 10 minutes a day. Now, 10 minutes doesn't sound very much, but you multiply 10 minutes by hundreds of engineers per day. That's a significant win. We could also celebrate when we launch new products that abstract complex configuration and knowledge away from our engineers and allow them to focus on their features. So really what we need to do is celebrate, and publicly. Another thing that we can do to make ourselves visible is to create a regular communication presence. So what I mean by that is actually getting your wider organization or your wider community used to hearing about your team and used to hearing about what your team is doing and used to actually hearing from your team. So not all of your customers may want to hear the same thing. You might need to kind of segment your communication a little bit. So within platform, what we tend to do is we use a combination of office hours, product updates, and newsletters. So we use office hours for deep dive, more technical walkthroughs, specifically aimed at engineers. We use the product updates to provide higher level roadmap communications, what we're working on, what's coming next, and actually sometimes what's been delayed and why. And then we use platform newsletters as a little bit of a kind of an async communication approach. So it's a little bit of something for everyone. And the platform newsletters lets our customers access our information without actually having to turn up with a call sometimes. So it contains a broad range of information from like new features, upcoming key dates, and incident updates. That's regular communication. The next thing, and actually probably my favorite one, is to cultivate evangelists. Now, there's no one that can talk about what you do better than your customers. I could spend hours probably telling you how amazing my platform team is and how amazing my platform is. I'm not 100% sure whether you believe me. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But if an actual user of my platform was here telling you about the benefits and what they gained from my platform, I think you might actually take on board a lot of what they said a little bit more. So, for example, quite recently, we rolled out a new dependency management feature for our platform. And adoption was fairly standard as it is in most of the things that we rolled out. So we had our early adopters, they were on it straight away. They were using all the features, they were requesting new features, and they were pushing our boundaries. Sometimes they were things that we hadn't even planned in yet. Getting the rest of engineering on board was a little bit more difficult and was a bit more sluggish. We had documentation available. We had example implementation. We had short video clips of usage and interaction, but it was still a bit sluggish. So what actually made the difference for us was inviting an existing power user, so one of these early adopters, to come onto one of our office hours and demonstrate their implementation. And this was a user who'd actually fully implemented the feature and whose team was seeing real benefits from their implementation. And surprise, surprise, maybe not, all of a sudden we had a spike in interest and a spike in adoption. So what I tend to do now, is particularly with early evangelists, is I keep a list of anyone who's given me any feedback about our platform. And I will always ask them if they're willing to either write some short feedback on one of our channels, maybe even record a video about how they're using our product, or if they want to come along to one of our comms calls to talk about their usage and the benefits that they've seen. So let's do that. Oh, let's go back, sorry, go back one. Essentially, these are just a few tips for any team that suffers under that burden of the cloak of invisibility. So very quick wins, celebrate your wins, create some regular communication, and cultivate your evangelists. So just finishing off, that's hopefully what we look like with people all seeing us right down there. With the small proviso at the bottom that not all heroes wear capes, which is probably one of my favourite ones. I'm Leena Mooneeram. I'm always happy to talk about platform engineering and platform culture and DevX, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Leena. Very well done.
Thank you.
For those of you that don't know Leena, she was like one of the early joiners as well, and she's now killing it and giving big conference talks all over the place. So, all right. So, any
What I can't
questions
work
for
out,
Leena?
though, unfortunately, is to have to stop sharing. Oh no, there it is at the top. Got it. Thank you, Anthony.
Any questions for Leena? No. So I have one, and I know that I always give the same variation of questions, but you know, again, DevOps, the problem is you have traditional companies and SREs should be doing operations. And like you said, operations well done is invisible,
Yeah.
but operations is proud about making life easier for everyone and the dev side of things. So as an architect or as a leader, how can I encourage and basically give you what you need in order to do more of the dev side of things and the improvement side of things?
I'm not sure I completely understand your question. How do you?
Basically, you're talking about giving visibility to
Yes.
the team, right? And you say the visibility is generally on new features, on things that move the needle forward.
Yeah.
So if I'm a leader, a CEO, an architect, a senior decision maker, how can I basically make you have more time to do this proper development and encourage you to be more visible, right? The dev side of things, basically.
I don't know if I think it's probably going to be a mixed answer. I think it's a combination of the team has to be willing to engage in these sorts of visibility activity. I think sometimes with DevOps teams, platform teams, etc., there isn't always a willingness to kind of do that kind of product part, I suppose, of platform. And it's not necessarily a skill or a role that's been traditionally part of that kind of DevOps team. And so there isn't a bit of upskilling. There is a little bit of what Carly was saying, putting yourself out there maybe, and trying to do a skill or trying to take something into your role that isn't traditionally part of it. You're having to push some boundaries. So there is a little bit coming from the engineers themselves. From senior leadership, I'm always grateful for any support I get from product teams. So if you could make a product manager or product owner available for me, I would love that. But also actually maybe building it into some of the job specs of platform engineers and DevOps engineers, that our role isn't just technical, it's socio-technical, and we have to be able to speak to our customers. And we're in a privileged position where we work right next door to our customers. We have to be able to maximize that opportunity. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfectly. Any other questions for Leena? So if not, the next person is Olivia with the talk Beyond the Heat, the Revolution for Africa's Environmental Resilience.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my screen? Yeah? Okay. Fantastic. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Samuyiwa. I'm a founder and engineer from South London. I'm also half Nigerian and half Ghanaian, best of both worlds. And today I'll be talking to you about the revolution for Africa's environmental resilience. So throughout this short presentation, I'll be covering Africa's environmental imperative and the challenges that the continent is facing, what is climate tech and what developments can be taken upon ourselves, both you and I. I'll then talk about local innovation and what is needed to drive global impact, followed by how we can catalyze climate tech in Africa. And finally, I'll introduce my startup, Yiwa. Okay, so what is Africa's environmental imperative? There's an urgent call right now to address the challenges that the continent is facing. And as you can see, they're across different areas. So we have agriculture. Currently, governments are making moves to ensure their food security. And this means that they no longer want to just be mainly importing produce, but they're realizing the richness of their land and they're putting infrastructures in place to be the main exporters. This is why we are seeing like a really huge call to skill young people in modern farming. Soil degradation is also an issue and it's becoming more evident in the northern region of Ghana. So for those who don't know, the northern region, compared to others, is quite dry. However, with the weather pattern changing due to climate change, the quality of soil is decreasing exponentially. There's another topic or another issue, I should say, is water scarcity, and this is linked with pollution. So without the right infrastructure, such as a waste management system, there's always going to be waterborne diseases. And if there's limited clean water, how can we use that same water, not only for everyday life, but also to irrigate a large amount of crops? So this is why you see low availability for irrigation and health issues. Last but not least, we have inefficient energy use, and this is a really huge challenge because when you couple millions of inefficient electrical appliances with a poor electricity distribution system, you have countries contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and environmental degradation. So with that being said, how can we actually solve these issues? So one way is the use of climate tech. And if you don't know what that is, here is a clip from an interview where I asked Tariq, another social entrepreneur, what is climate tech? So in your own words, what do you think climate tech is and what do you think is involved in it?
I'm not too familiar with climate tech, but what I would say is technology that aims to protect and preserve the climate. And through that process, they'll probably be trying to decarbonize the climate as well.
Okay, so Tariq has the right idea. Climate tech refers to the technological solutions aimed at mitigating and adapting to climate change. So we can mitigate and adapt to climate change through sustainable developments across different sectors, such as efficient appliances and equipment. So this is where we will see the development and production of highly efficient HVAC systems and regulated refrigeration that will come into play, along with retrofitting buildings with LED lighting. And retrofit LED lighting is becoming more and more popular in Africa. We have decentralized energy systems. So this involves mini grids, standalone solar systems, and micro hydropower systems. And these three combined are very promising because it addresses the issue of a high demand for electricity by tapping into the Earth's natural energy sources. Another area that can be explored is smart agriculture practices. So in this world of AI and machine learning, you can use data-driven solutions such as crop monitoring and remote sensing that can actually increase farming productivity. And finally, we have waste management innovations. So this can include waste to energy technologies, which is the production of electricity from organic waste materials, which in turn minimizes pollution, and landfill waste. Okay, so as we're sitting here right now, I would class us as the local innovation. So if we all decided to innovate and drive one of the developments from the previous slide, how could we have global impact? We could have global impact with support for research and development, access to funding and financial resources, promotion of collaboration and networking, and the recognition and validation of local knowledge and expertise. And to ensure the longevity of an innovation, the catalyst, the driving force behind them would be one, international funding and investment. This would provide access to capital beyond domestic markets, and it would also enable governments and organizations to finance critical infrastructures, as well as stimulating economic growth. Policy and regulatory support. So this creates certainty, stability, and protects public health and safety. And public-private partnerships. So this provides resource mobilization, but it also means that you share the risk among the entities that you have a partnership with, and there's a bit more speed and flexibility with your innovation. So all of these coupled with mentorship and networking, will keep the mission alive. So now I would like to introduce to you my startup called Jiwa. So I founded Jiwa during my master's in electronic and electrical engineering in 2021. But I only launched in March of this year. So our vision is to revolutionize Africa's environmental landscape. And we aim to do this by innovating smart air conditioning units fueled by renewable energy. So providing sustainable and cost-effective cooling for homes and businesses. Why do I want to do this? Well, during my research, I found that millions of inefficient, used, and ozone depleting AC units are being, along with their raw materials, are being imported and sold to Africa every year. 74% of these inefficient units are assembled in Africa, with 35% not being able to be legally sold in their respective manufacturing countries. And there's also a huge demand for electricity across Africa. The demand is expected to increase tenfold by 2040. So a greener alternative is basically a must right now. We are at early stage, but we're making great progress, and we'll soon be commencing our R&D stage. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn as Yiwa Tech. So follow us on our journey. Thank you everyone for listening. And before I finish, I would just like to leave on a quote from Maya Angelou with a slight twist. The sun is a daily reminder that Africa too can rise. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Olivia. Amazing talk. Any questions for Olivia? Go ahead, Barry.
Hi, Olivia. That was great. Really interesting. So I'm interested in Yiwa, right? Is that pronounced right?
Yes.
So if you win on your mission here, what changes would happen? Like if you were to change sort of just a small percent, if you were to win just a small percent of the market there, do you know what kind of impact that would have on globally, or have you got anything that can explain that?
Yes, so say if I don't know, I want to say in Nigeria and Egypt have the largest air conditioning markets right now. So say if we launched in both of them, we would have to install or create basically a decentralized energy system in whatever areas that we would launch. So again, like I said in my previous slide, that's solving one problem, which is the demand for electricity. And for customers, for example, in the rural communities, electricity is very expensive. So having a standalone sort of energy system where they could possibly access or pay for their power on a pay-as-you-go basis is a lot better for them than having to pay huge amounts, monthly, but as and when they can. And it's obviously going to be subsidized because, again, it's a renewable energy source. So they have cost savings, and they're also saving themselves from actually breathing in toxic refrigerants, because that's what they're using right now. So yeah.
It sounds amazing. Well, my only other question then is, how can we help? What help do you need? Where can the community help?
I would say just spreading awareness of our mission, awareness, and also right now as a company, as a business, we're looking for funding to actually start our R&D. And as you know, funding is a very hard it's a very hard thing to do. But yes, I would say just exposure.
Okay, let's follow up afterwards. Got some contacts I can probably introduce you to. So yeah, amazing.
Oh, thank you, Barry. Thank you.
Olivia, just to give you a heads up, this is Barry. He's like the main founder of the group, and when he offers help, do take it. I mean, this whole group started with me like moving to London and being pissed off because like COVID was there and I couldn't go to any conferences and learn how to speak. And like 2 weeks later, the aspiring speakers group was founded by Barry. So complaining to him was kind of the best thing that I ever did. So yeah. All right. So the next person is Rashmi Jain with the art of NoSQL to SQL migration.
Right, that's me. I'll start sharing my screen. Let me know if you see it. Able to see my screen? Thank you, Barry. First of all, thank you. A few thank yous, actually. First one is to Barry. We had a little couch conference thing with Barry, and then he gave us this confidence of coming up and speaking out in public. So this is my first ever lightning talk. Big thank you for Discover as well, for providing us the opportunity, promoting the Women's in Tech to come out and speak. And last but not least, thank you so much, aspiring speaker community, for providing us the platform to do this. So thank you so much. I'm Rashmi Jain. I work as a principal software engineer in Discover, and I'm here to share some of my experience and knowledge of the NoSQL to SQL migration, which we have been doing from last 8-9 months. I think we are about to finish. We'll be reaching production by end of June. So it's looking all good. So let's make a start. Oops. Yeah, with this. So when we started this journey of migration, and I do have a little story behind that, actually. So I was on the holiday, and then when I came back from the holiday, one of my teammates, because I work as in tech anchor capacity, I handed over to my other teammates when I went on the holiday. He came back and said, Rashmi, I have something urgent to talk to you. And I was like, what happened like in just 3 days? I just went for holiday. And then he said, then whenever you settle in, we can have a talk. And then we spoke once I just logged in and settled in. And then he said, everything changed. Whatever we planned for next few months, it's been changed. The priorities have been changed. And now we are needing to do something new. And that was like, SQL to NoSQL migration. I forgot to mention the intended audience for this talk is the people with a little bit knowledge of at least what databases are and then how the databases works. So my initial thoughts with that reaction from my friend was that it's going to be complex because we had quite tight deadlines. We're supposed to do it like just in 8 months. So initial thoughts were like, I was like, yes, of course it is going to be complex. It's not an easy task to do. And will it be challenging? Definitely it is going to be challenging to achieve so much into just in very tight deadlines. How are we going to migrate the data? Those are the things which comes into our mind first, that because now everything is working all good in the unstructured way, now we are having to do the changes, and then what are the options I do have in order to migrate the data. Do we have any existing tools which I can just leverage and migrate the data? All those sort of questions came in as an initial thoughts when I just spoke to the person. I was like, okay, let's get on. We need to do this. We will get it done. So what I mean by unstructured data, just in case if nobody, some people don't know about it, that means the data represented, the example I've used is JSON. So if you just say within few curly braces, you have seen all the data within here. The example I've taken is employee data, which is very simple. Everybody knows the employee ID. So a few basic information about the employee and then some contact details. So imagine that is the data I've got. I've taken a simple example just in order to explain it better. But in terms of the work we have done, our data was like more than 250 fields in this JSON format, if you look at. So you can imagine the amount of work was involved in this and why I wanted to share this journey and experiences we had. So for my talk, I'll be using this example. Once I know how my data was, obviously I know that, and then I started thinking about how am I going to model my data, how my unstructured data is going to look like into structured data. So which means how my employee records are going to look like from the unstructured database, which in our case was Gemfire, but the destination database which we choose was Postgres, which is an SQL-based database. So how it is going to look like. Then am I going to transfer my data into multiple tables? Am I going to have some constraints among the tables? Am I going to have some relationships among the tables? And then what else I can do? And then in terms of like, do I need to have any normalizations or anything? I think when you work with databases, especially with the SQL databases, normalization plays a big role in there. You need to have correct relationships and constraints placed in there. So that all brings a bit of nervousness when you do these sort of big migrations and stuff, that, oh my God, this is how it was, and now I'm going to do so much. So if we just take back our employee example, and if I am having just thinking in my head that, okay, what I have and how it is going to look like, then the initial thoughts will be that I might create an employee table which just have my employee data, basic data, employee ID, name, salary, or whether the employee is married or not. I might create another table which will have the contact information, because an employee can have multiple contacts as well. But then how these two gonna relate to each other? So I need to build some relationship between these two tables. So I might create a third table where I would say, right, this is the relationship an employee can have in contact ID or can have multiple contact IDs. So in that way, my data has turned into 3 multiple tables now. Those will be your initial thoughts, but that with this data, but imagine if you have like 500 fields in your JSON structure, imagine how many tables you want to break that into, and it's going to be a difficult task to do. So then I think then comes that the choice of the database which you do, because you need to know your data, and based on the data, you need to make your choices. If your choices go wrong, then I think it can go wrong as well. So when we do the database choices, we had the best thing we did was that the Postgres supports the unstructured and the structured data both. So then in that case, we could do some, and Postgres is also quite a performant database, and we can do indexes as well on the unstructured data. So that means it was all covered with that. I could do it with the minimum changes within the destination database. What I meant by that is, if you again go back to our employee example, what we can do is, I'm just proposing that we could just create one table where what we are doing is, I've got my basic employee details, but for the contact information where I was needing to go and create a new table and then a relationship table, I could just create a field of type JSON. Because in the Postgres, it supports for the unstructured data, which is JSON, it supports the indexes as well, where you could just search within the JSON. And then, this is what will look like a minimum change you will need to do. Why we should be doing this as a first step is that when you do big data migrations, I think the few things we need to keep in mind is that you need to know your data best. Once you understand your data, like we understood our employee data, we understood what the contact details or how the employee data looks like, then you can decide that what is the minimum migration approach I should be taking. I could have gone with creating 3 tables and then having huge code changes and stuff, or I could just do an MVP in here. I could just create 1 table, which would mean that in my code base, I'll have to do minimum changes in order to adapt that. So, oops, sorry. And then once you know what your minimum is, what is the minimum viable product for you in terms of your migration, then you can think about how am I going to do it. For our case, we didn't had any out-of-the-box tools available, so we went a bit brave. We decided that we're going to create our custom tools. So I think rather than looking just what out there in the market, we should see, but if there is nothing immediately available, rather than working out things, you could be brave enough and then create your own tools in order to migrate the data. We created migrators and the comparators, where the migrators were taking the data from the source, converting it into the destination supportable format, and then storing into the destination database. So think about the custom tools, and then I think we should think about, can it be done in phases as well? Because it makes it a lot easier. So if you look at the employee example back again, as a first phase, we can just use 1 table, migrate all the data, all done, tested with the minimum change in the code. Consumer can do their testing as well, all good. But as a second phase, if you want to really go fully structured, you can then divide that employee table into multiple tables, create the relationships, and then go phase by phase with the minimum changes. So that's what when we go in phases, we have minimum consumer impact, and then we have minimum changes in our applications. So that gives us more confidence what we are doing. And then when we keep the consumer impact minimum, I think that's the key where you can have a successful migration and all. With that, I'm done with the talk. Thank you very much for listening me, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rashmi. And I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
It's Rashmi.
Rashmi.
Yeah.
Close enough. Sorry for that.
No worries at all. No worries at all.
Amazing talk. I have a question actually.
Yes,
It's kind of is not exactly on the topic, but close enough. The thing is, it used to be more clear cut. I'll use NoSQL because I don't know, I need something right intensive or key value pairs, or I need graph like supports, and I'm going to use something. But now we have this more general document-based NoSQL solutions like MongoDB, and we have NewSQL, and basically looks like the use cases are overlapping with relational databases a little bit more. So I have teams wanting to migrate away from MongoDB into Postgres, and I want people, and I have teams with Postgres trying to migrate to say MongoDB. And do you have any tips on like how to avoid the whole migration process and like have a better decision to start with?
If your company wants to do the migrations, I'm not sure whether we can avoid the migration, but the tips I would suggest is that if you have so when you go, for us, when we went from unstructured to structures, which is like JSON to like SQL based, it's quite different. And we looked into the outside world whether we have out of the box solution. So we don't have any, and we didn't find any, to be honest. But the best thing I think you could do is you can have custom tools built in within the organization, which we did. Keep them, and when these migration comes, you can just tweak them and then get the migration done rather than creating them and throwing them away. So that's one thing. I think these database migration gonna keep coming, because when you get multiple flavors, you always want to try, isn't it? But it's like ice cream. You get multiple flavors. You go to an ice cream shop, and then you've eaten vanilla so many times, but now there's like a blackcurrant came in, and I really want to try. So you could try a mix of it. And when somebody says you have vanilla as well as a blackcurrant as a mix, then you really get, I'm going a bit safe as well, but then I'm trying something new. So with the Postgres, MongoDB, I haven't much idea about the MongoDB. Will be moving or not moving, I don't know. But I haven't learned much about the MongoDB. But with the Postgres, I can say, because it comes with 2 flavors, you could just leverage that. It's very nice. That's the best thing I liked about the Postgres. Just leverage both the flavors. You had the vanilla and you had the blackcurrant. Just enjoy, in a sense. Yeah, so that's what we did as well. So that's the best capability. The support for JSON-B came in quite handy for us, because when we had the big blocks of JSON, we could just create a field and provide it as a JSON-B. And we did the performance testing as well. So we used GIN indexes on JSON-B columns, which gives you quite high performance as well. So it wasn't like you had to move into fully structured to get that performance. You could just, so that I think it's best of both. Yeah. I don't know whether that answered, Anthony, for you.
No, that was completely perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Hashimi? Sorry.
Rashmi, I don't have a question, but I just thought I'd say that was great. I thought it was really interesting. Like, obviously, I'm not a technical person myself, and so often I watch technical talks and they fly over my head. The second I get into anything that's just a layer technical. But I thought that was great.
Thank you, Barry.
I would sort of follow and keep going and see where you were going with it all, and yeah, definitely learn something. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Any other question, anyone? If not, then I would like to thank you, Ashu and Angela, as well, for coming and supporting me for my first ever talk. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You nailed it.
Oh, thanks, Ashu.
So, folks, I just would like to thank everyone for coming in today, Carly and Barry, for your support as always. We are always looking for speakers. Some of there is kind of a queue, but do register to your community. Do say that you want to talk, and we're going to have another event like this next month or in a couple of months at most, and we're also doing all sorts of other fun things. So yeah, I hope to see you next time, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.